Today we're going to be ranking open source alternatives to proprietary software or just open source programs in general on a tier list from S being the best tier to F being obviously the worst. I've made several categories of programs and we're going to see the pros and cons of each program. This is just my personal opinion and is not objective or anything. Starting with the browsers category, which is an alternative to Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Opera, and the other typical browsers you would use. The first one on the list is the Firefox browser, which I think is an okay browser, but I don't personally like it because it has become less and less of a privacy-focused browser and is probably privacy-wise the worst on this list today. It's obviously the base of a lot of other good browsers, but I think it's not up to date on privacy standards and is becoming less and less of a good browser. That's why I put it in D tier. Next comes the Brave browser, which is actually a really good browser, probably one of the most privacy-focused browsers on this list. I think it is really functional, it has a lot of features because it's based on Chromium, but actually I don't like it because it has a lot of bloat like the cryptocurrencies or like ads, which makes it instantly worse for me. That's why I don't use it. But I think it's still a really solid browser, that's why I gave it an A tier. Next up we have any Firefox fork really, and what I find good about it is that is really customizable in the regard of privacy, and you can really tweak the looks of it. For example, the Zen browser, which I use, a lot of people like it because it has the vertical tabs and because it looks really good. And it's also very privacy respecting if you tweak it correctly. I don't see any cons there, so that's why I put it in S tier. Next up we have the Tor browser, which is this browser that relies on the Tor network, which basically redirects your internet traffic several times, so you can access restricted websites and stuff, and you can just surf more privately and securely. But it obviously has the downside that it loads very slowly, but I don't think it's very fair to rate it badly because it's obviously not meant as a day-to-day browser that you would use as a daily driver. So that's why for that use case it is really good. That's why I also put it in S tier. So next up we have the Office Suite, which is obviously an alternative to the Microsoft Office Suite or like the Google Drive, Google Docs thing. My personal pick is OnlyOffice, which is, in my opinion, really easy to use and it is very similar to Microsoft Word, which obviously makes it a lot easier for people switching to Linux or to open source using it. And that's why I really like it. Some people criticize it because it's not free for commercial use. And also some people reported formatting files from other programs like Word weirdly, but it hasn't happened to me. That's why I still put it in S tier. Next up we have LibreOffice, which is like a program I don't really like. I think it's really hard to navigate. Some people like it because it's obviously completely free and open source and it is compatible with a lot of formats. But I find it really clunky. I just don't like it. I think it comes down to preference. That's why I still put it in C tier. Next up we have anything related to mail, which is obviously an alternative to Gmail or the Microsoft's Outlook. So the first program is Thunderbird Mail, which is like this mail client I use. I use it for my Gmail accounts. There's not really much to say about it. I think it has a really intuitive, nice interface, and it works really well. That's why I put it in A tier. Same goes for Proton Mail. It's like this whole thing where you have this subscription. It's really privacy focused, not like Gmail. I use the free account, but you can also buy it in the subscription. I think it has a really nice interface, but it's obviously a bit expensive. But I would recommend the free account. I think it's worth it. That's why I also put it in A tier. Next up we have VPNs, which is an alternative to, for example, NordVPN. The first one being Proton VPN, which is a very private VPN and also doesn't hand your information out to law enforcement if you do anything illegal. I don't like it because I find it very expensive, and I also find the pricing a little inconsistent, that it's like cheaper if you buy it for 1 year. That's why I put it in C tier. That being said, there's also a free tier where you can only choose from a couple of locations, but it is really useful if you just need to quickly change your location and don't want to pay. The other one on the list being Mulvad VPN, which is the one I personally use. I find it really good because it is secure and private and also feature rich. It has a really cheap price, being €5 per month, and the pricing is really consistent. That means it is always €5, whether you pay for 1 month or just for 1 year, it's always €5 per month. The cons are that there is no official client for Arch-based distros, but it is available through the AUR, so the Arch user repositories, so that way you can use it even if you're on Arch. But I find it's a really cool company, I find it a really good product, and that's why I put it in S tier. Next up we have game launchers, which is a really broad category, but it's basically alternatives to Steam, the EA app, the Epic Games Store, and the regular Minecraft launcher. So the first program is Lutris, which is this launcher for a whole lot of stores, for example Epic Games, the EA Store, and also a lot of other ones. I think it's really cool because there's a lot of stores available, and you can also manually add locally installed games, for example games that you have on Steam, so that you can access them even when you're on Lutris. So it's basically your whole library in one program, which is really cool. But I find it, I don't use it that much because I think it's not as convenient as Steam, because you have to manually add all the games. But it's still a really good program, that's why I put it in A tier. Next up we have the Heroic Games Launcher, which I personally only use for Epic Games. I think it has a very easy installation of your games. If you purchase them, they just show up in your library and you can install them. But for me, there's the issue where it always seems to log me out of my Epic account. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but that's why I don't really like it. And also it lacks support for other stores other than Epic Games Store and the GOG Store. That's why I put it in B tier. Next up we have the Prism launcher, which is, I believe, the only Minecraft launcher you should really consider on Linux, because it works really well and it also has support for Modrinth and CurseForge. And I think it's really easy to navigate, to copy folders, to edit arguments, or change mods, for example. Some people don't like it because it's not that aesthetically pleasing, but I don't really care about that. That's why I still put it in S tier. The next category is drawing applications, which is an alternative to Photoshop or the free online alternative Photopea. The first program being Krita, which is a KDE application and I find very easy to use, but of course it lacks a lot of features that Photoshop has, but it hasn't. But it's obviously to be expected from an open source clone, which is free. So I still like it, I still use it, and I put it in A tier. Next up we have GIMP, and I don't think we have to talk about that, F tier. Next up we have video editors, which is obviously an alternative to Adobe's Premiere Pro or the free DaVinci Resolve. First of all, there's obviously Kdenlive, which is also made by the KDE developers, and I love it. I think it's a great editor. I'm using it right now to edit this video. I like that there's lots of inbuilt effects and it's very easy to like change keyframes, for example. but some people don't like it because it's not really similar to something like DaVinci Resolve. But I've personally never used that, and I've started on Kdenlive, so that's why I'm giving it an easy S tier. Then we have an honorable mention, which is opencut.app, which is just a web app you can use in your browser to quickly edit stuff. It's supposed to be a clone of the proprietary CapCut, if you know that. And it's very easy to use, it's very beginner friendly, and I like it for just small adjustments in the video, small cuts, and I think for that it is very good, but obviously it's still an early beta and there's not as much functionality, but just for small edits I think it's a great program. That's why I'm putting it in A tier. Next up we have LLM Programs, which is an alternative to ChatGPT or Gemini. In this category I actually only have one application, which is LM Studio, which I find really intuitive and really easy to install. You have a lot of stats and it works really well in general. I don't see any cons there. I haven't actually tried anything else really. And I think it is a really good application. It works perfectly. You can download all the LLMs in the program, and that's why I put it in S tier. And as the last category we have login managers, being an alternative to the Google or Microsoft Authenticator, or OnePassword as a password manager. The first one is Authenticator, which is the authenticator app that I use. You can use it on both your mobile phone and on your desktop, and you can even use it without an account, but I do have an account just so that I can sync it. What I find good about it is that it works really well. You can scan the QR code that it gives you, and it has a really nice design. That's why I put it in S tier. The next application is Proton Pass, which is also another one of the Proton applications, and it is included in a subscription, and it is an authenticator app as well as a password manager, but you do have to make an account and it is saved in the cloud, which I don't really like because I don't want my passwords saved in the cloud, because the cloud is just another one's computer, and it's also paid, so it's very expensive. That's why I would never use it. D tier. And as the last program on the list we have KeePassXC, which is the password manager I use. I find it really good because it stores your passwords locally and you only have to remember one master password. There's the random generator with custom options, for example the length or the characters it should be allowed to use, and it also has support for hardware keys if that's something you're interested in. But obviously if you forget the password you obviously lose access to the database. But I use it every day. I find it a really great application. That's why I also put it in S tier. So this is the finished tier list. Do you agree? Is there something you would have done differently? Please tell me in the comments. Otherwise, goodbye.